everyone. I'm Alka Jangir. Your course is Nature and Properties of Materials. This is offered by Professor Vishak Bhattacharya from Department of Mechanical Engineering, IIT Kanpur. I'm your TA, Alka Jangir from IIT Kanpur. So in week first, we'll be talking about Introduction to Engineering Materials and Mechanical Properties. So firstly, we'll be going through some sample assignment questions which will be helping you in solving assignment questions, your weekly assignments, and then we'll be going through some lecture notes that will help you in understanding some topics. So first question is, in a standard tensile test near the elastic limit zone, your options are that tensile stress increases in linear proportion to the stress. Second option is tensile stress increases at a faster rate, and third option is tensile stress decreases at a faster rate, and fourth is none of the mentioned. So you can if you have any query, you can ask, and in this question the answer will be your tensile stress decreases at faster rate. Now for solving this type of questions, you have to keep in mind the stress strain curve. So this is your stress strain curve. Okay, so in this case, up to here it is your elastic limit around yield strength. So after this part, it is asking in the strain hardening region whether your tensile stress decreases at a faster rate or increases at a faster rate. So in this case, beyond elastic limit, your tensile strain increases faster compared to your stress because of strain hardening. Strain hardening will be occurring because of the dislocation multiplication in this region. Second question. Okay, in second question, what do the two subscripts of stress tensor represent? Your options are directions of stress and strain, and directions of strain and normal to the surface on which they are acting, or direction of stress and normal to the surface on which they are acting, and direction of stress and the flow direction. So as it is given stress tensor, so it will be including direction of stress and the normal to the surface that they are acting. So answer will be your third answer. And this is how you denote your stress tensor. So stress tensor is sigma ij. Now I will be the part which is your direction of the stress application. In this case, for example, you focus on sigma 11. So in this case, your stress is being applied in the x1 direction. So your direction I is 1. And second is the normal to this plane. Now in this case, normal will be also along the x1 plane. So it will be sigma 1, 1. Now third question is, which statement is correct? And statements are: necking starts at the yield point, necking point phenomena are seen in aluminum, or endurance limit can be determined by tensile testing. Other statement is yield strength is structure sensitive property. Now we can understand most of these are based on stress strain curve, and in case of necking, we know that it starts at UTS point, at the maximum point. So as shown earlier, in this case, at the maximum point, at this point your necking starts. So this is corresponds to UTS point, not yield strength point. And second statement is yield point phenomena are seen in aluminum. Now this phenomena is seen in materials having interstitial atoms. So it is seen in case of steels, mild steels. And third statement is endurance limit can be determined by tensile testing. Now endurance limit depends on fatigue test, so it can't be determined by tensile testing. Fourth statement states that yield strength is structure sensitive property, which is a correct statement. Now we can explain all these statements. So in case of the yield strength of material, it changes with microstructure. For example, if you take annealed, normalized and hardened steels, though they have same composition, they still show different yield strength. And necking starts at UTS point, yield point phenomena seen in alloys with small amounts of interstitial atoms. Okay, and also your endurance limit is determined by fatigue testing, while tensile testing gives you tensile properties such as elastic modulus, engineering stress, engineering strain and yield strength, etc. Now fourth question is, what is the ratio of Young's modulus of elasticity to the modulus of rigidity in terms of Poisson's ratio mu? And your options are 2 times 1 plus mu, 1 plus mu, 2 times 1 minus mu or 1 minus mu. So this is the formula that I think will help you in solving some questions in your assignment as well. So this is the formula, which is E equals to 2G 1 plus mu. E is elastic modulus, G is shear modulus. So if you want to find out what is the ratio, so E upon G will be 2 times 1 plus mu. Fifth question is, Rockwell test utilizes blank, a measure of hardness. Now in case of Rockwell test, you utilize which of these property? So first is load, second is depth of indentation or diameter of indentation or time of loading. Now out of these, depth of indentation measuring is very easy compared to measuring diameter. So in this case, Rockwell test is there, that's why it is used in various industries, because depth measuring is simpler compared to measuring diameter, which requires measurement by microscope or something like that. Now this is the Rockwell hardness number, N minus HT. So here your N and H are scale factors and D will be your depth of penetration in mm. And for in case of Rockwell hardness, there are various scales A, B, C. So in this case, so for those who have joined now, so I'm trying to solve some questions so you can understand how to solve your assignment question. So in this case, how to, in case of Rockwell test, which of the parameter is utilized to measure hardness? So in this case, you measure depth of penetration. So based on various scales, in case of B, C, your value of H is kept 500 and value of N is 130 and 100 for scales B and C respectively. In sixth question, which materials are around 95% porous? Your options are aerogels, piezoelectrics, amalgams or nitinol, and your answer will be aerogels. And in case of aerogels, they are 95% porous and hence they are very light materials. In case of, so this porosity makes them highly thermal insulating. So they are used at various applications consisting of those, and also it absorbs sound as well. So for acoustic effects also aerogels are used. In case of piezoelectric materials, they convert mechanical stress into an electric signal and electric voltage into mechanical strain. And amalgams are mixtures of mercury and other metals which are used as dental fillings. Nitinol is an alloy of nickel and titanium. So if you have any question, you can ask in middle, okay? Seventh question is, which of the following is not a biomaterial? Your options are PMMA, gold, lead or calcium phosphate. So out of all these, only lead is a metal which is toxic to our body. So this can't be used as biomaterial and others can be used. So lead is toxic to human body, so it can't be used as biomaterial, and other materials PMMA, gold and calcium phosphate are used for various purposes as biomaterials. Eighth question is, the hardness of a material is the resistance of a material against. Your options are oxidation, indentation, twinning or fatigue. So in case of hardness, you measure resistance against permanent deformation. So this permanent deformation can be in form of either indentation or scratch. So your answer will be indentation. And for explaining, we can say that hardness is defined as the resistance of surface of a material against plastic deformation through indentation or scratch. So this is a surface property, and oxidation resistance is a chemical property, and fatigue resistance is also different from hardness. Fatigue resistance will be resistance against cyclic loading. Question 9. The ratio of elastic modulus and shear modulus is 3. Then what is Poisson's ratio? So earlier we saw this relation E equals to 2G 1 plus mu. So using this formula you can solve this question. Okay, so here you are given ratio of elastic modulus upon shear modulus. So E upon G you are given equals to 3. Then what is Poisson's ratio? You have to find out what is mu. So your options are 0.33, 0.25, 0.50 and 0.40. So this is the explanation. This was your formula. So here you just have to put value of E upon G. So 3 by 2 minus 1 will be 1.5 minus 1. Hence it will be 0.5. Question 10th is, what is the main advantage of using honeycomb type of structure in engineering applications? So honeycomb type of structures, you know that these will be providing light structures. So these will be providing high strain to weight ratio. So first will be the correct answer. Other options are low cost of production, easy manufacturability and good electrical conductivity. So these are various advantages and disadvantages of honeycomb type of structure. So these are very lightweight yet strong structures and have high compressive strength and have efficient material usage and have good thermal insulation and resistant to corrosion. But they have disadvantage such as difficult to manufacture. So this statement easy manufacturability is incorrect. They are less damage resistant and these can be expensive. So low cost of production is also an incorrect statement. And these are not suitable for heavy loads and these have limited material choices. Now we'll be going through some lecture notes. So some topics that you didn't understand that might be that you can understand. and it might be helpful for you. So first topic is history and evolution of materials. So as we know that materials are rooted in our culture and they have influence over virtually every segment of our daily lives. For example, for transportation, you use buses, your vehicles, all these are made of materials, and as you see any development in materials, you'll see development in these transportation vehicles as well. Other examples are housing, clothing, communication, recreation, etc. And early civilizations have been designated by material development. So there are various ages such as Stone Age, Bronze Age, and Iron Age. Firstly, the term Stone Age was coined in late 19th century by the Danish scholar Christian J. Thomson, and it roughly extended between 15,000 to 2000 BC. It is characterized by the creation and use of stone tools, and woods, bones and other materials were also used as tools but have a shorter life. So these are various tools that were made using stones in this age. In case of Bronze Age, bronze is just an alloy of copper and tin. So this extended between 3500 to 500 BC, it beginning of the metal working. So in this case, copper was mixed with tin to create a new alloy bronze, which was stronger than other two metals individually. And in this case, the tools, weapons, armors and decorations were made using bronze. Third age, it is the last stage of the archaeological sequence known as the three-age system. So Stone Age, Bronze Age and Iron Age. After this, we also coined some terms such as Silicon Age and Carbon Age based on the electronic devices that we use. But for this course, you need to just remember these three ages. Someone else has joined. Okay. For those who have joined later, we are going through some lecture notes now. Initially, we went through some questions, assignment questions. Now we are going through lecture notes. So in Iron Age, it began about 3000 years ago and it continuing today. The use of iron and steel has changed drastically human development, and it has witnessed the industrial revolution. It has improved modes of transportation in case of automobiles, railways and aeroplanes. All these are connected to this Iron Age. Now, one of the things is iron pillar, which is situated in Delhi. So it is a solid shaft of wrought iron, high phosphorus content, about 7 meter tall and 0.4 meter diameter, weighing over 6000 kg. It shows high resistance to corrosion, results from an even layer of crystalline iron hydrogen phosphate hydrate layer. Now it serves to protect it from the effects of local Delhi climate. This is the reason that this doesn't rust. Now there are various pinpoints in history which led to the development seen in steel making. So in 1855, Henry Bessemer, he led to the steel mass production using Bessemer converter. So in this case, air blast is injected into molten pig iron. Pig iron will be containing a lot of impurity in form of carbon. So 3.5 to 4.5% of carbon will be there. Now this carbon is reduced using this air blast. So this is reduced and there will be, but for this process you require your steel to have lower phosphorus content. Now to reduce this phosphorus content, a new process was coined in 1860 known as Gilchrist-Thomas process, which is improvement to the Bessemer process. In this case, limestone was used to remove phosphorus. In 1865, Siemens-Martin and Oppenhurst process. In this case, it complemented the Bessemer process, melting iron bar or steel scrap with pig iron. So in case of steel scrap, you will be having lower amount of carbon, and pig iron will be having higher amount of carbon. So this will be, carbon amount will be diluted. In 1953, basic oxygen steel making. In this case, oxygen blast was used instead of air. Now air may contain some impurities, which led to some impurities in your final product as well. Now this problem was solved in this case. Now latest electric arc furnaces are used. In this case, mainly recycling of steel scrap is done, and steel can be recycled endlessly with no detrimental effects on its properties, and all steel created as long ago as 150 years can be recycled and used in new products and applications. Now next topic is material classification. After this there will be mechanical properties. So in material classification, there are 5 type of classes of materials. First is metals. In this case, it can be further classified into ferrous and non-ferrous metals. In case of ferrous, your iron based metals, iron and steel. Second is non-ferrous, so remaining metals, copper, aluminium, titanium, gold, all these will be non-ferrous metals. Second is non-metals, so on right side of your periodic table, these will be having higher number of electrons in their outer shell. So these will be your non-metals. These can be in 3 different physical states as opposed to metals. Metals are mostly found in solid state, and gases will be hydrogen, helium, nitrogen, oxygen. In case of liquid, your bromine. In case of solid, carbon, phosphorus, sulfur, selenium, iodine, these all are solids. In case of ceramics, these can withstand very high temperatures, and these are the combination of metal and non-metal parts. So in this case, aluminium is your metal, oxygen is your non-metal, and these both combined, they make a ceramic. So Al2O3, SiO2, SiC, silicon carbide, diamond, graphite, all these are ceramics. Fourth is polymers. So in this case, your options are, your examples are wool, silk, which are natural polymers. Others are polythene, PVC, nylon, bakelite. These are synthetic polymers. These are mainly hydrocarbons. Okay, so final category is composites, which are made as a combination of these 4 classes. Other, so these can be combination of different classes. Examples are wood, concrete, fiberglass, carbon fiber reinforced plastics, or glass fiber reinforced plastics. Firstly, metals. So metals can be characterized by following properties. First is physical properties. In this case, they have good electrical and heat conductors, and they are malleable, so they can be formed into thin sheets. Ductile. Ductility means they can be stressed into thin wires, and they possess metallic luster. So as you can see, all these metals, they show a metallic type of luster, and these are mainly solid at room temperature except mercury, which is liquid. Now chemical properties, they are usually have 1 to 3 electrons in their outer shell, so they can easily lose their outer electrons, and these form oxides that are basic. So for example, sodium oxide will be basic. These are good reducing agents because they lose electrons easily and have lower electronegativity. Non-metals, they have poor conductor of heat and electricity. They are almost opposite of metals, and they are brittle. So they are not ductile, they are brittle, and they don't possess any metallic luster, and if they are very thin, then they are transparent, and physical state can be either solid, liquid or gas. In case of chemical properties, so they have higher number of electrons in their outer shell, so they're more likely to gain electrons or share valence electrons, and these form oxides that are acidic. So for example, sulfur oxide or phosphorus oxide, these are acidic in nature, and these are good oxidizing agents and have very higher electronegativity. Examples are diamond and your coal. All these are non-metals. And ceramics, now in this case, these are inorganic materials made from compounds of metal and non-metal. So they are formed by action of heat and subsequent cooling, and these are brittle in nature and good insulator of heat and electricity. That's why they are used in making these roof tiles, pottery or some refractories, and these have excellent compressive strength. So these are also used in making bearings. So silicon nitride or nitrate or silicon carbide, they are used in bearings. Other class is polymers. These are hydrocarbons or large molecules composed of many repeated subunits. So they can be natural polymers or synthetic polymers, as I told earlier, and these are very cheap to form. So as you see around you, most of the materials you see around you are made because of polymers, because they have melting temperature very low, so they are easy to manufacture and give intricate shapes. Composites, these are, as I told earlier, these are combination of different materials. So two or more constituent materials with significantly different properties, which after combination produce a material with characteristics different from the individual components. So the individual components remain separate, so they'll be having a distinct physical boundary between them. For example, this fiber, this can be of either ceramic fiber, it can be polymer fiber. So these fiber, when combined with matrix, this matrix can be either material. It can be metal, it can be your ceramic, it can be polymer. All these combined these both will combine and form composite. Now you have smart materials as well in your syllabus. So in this case, these can change their physical properties in the specific manner in response to specific stimulus input. So this stimulus input, meaning it can be heat, it can be magnetic field, electric field, or any stress applied. So all these can change their properties. So some of the examples are, first is piezoelectric material. In this case, there will be generation of an electric charge in response to any applied mechanical stress, and vice versa. In case of magnetostrictive materials, if you change in the dimension of ferromagnetic material in a magnetic field, and there will be vice versa effect. Third is phase transition dependent. So in this case, it is a shape memory type of effect. For example, if you take your austenite into cold temperature, then you form it in certain shape then on increase of temperature it will again regain its shape if you deform it at lower temperature. And other is electro or magneto-rheological materials. So rheological is depends on viscosity. So if you change any electric or magnetic field around a material, it will show change in viscosity. Now other category is biomaterials. In this case, the substances excluding food and drugs are introduced into a living body. So these can be, for example, some implants that you are using, or these can be with the aim of improving or replacing a diseased, damaged or lost tissue or a whole organ. So synthetic organs, these will also consist some biomaterials. Examples are joint replacement, bone plates, bone cement, or contact lenses, pins and screws for fracture stabilization. These all require biomaterials. Now biomaterials can be metals. In this case, your cobalt chromium alloys, stainless steel, gold, titanium alloys, vitalium, which is cobalt chromium molybdenum alloy, amalgams, mercury, silver, tin alloy, and shape memory alloys, which is nitinol. These all are used as biomaterials. So some of the usage are in orthopedics, dentistry, stents, etc. In case of polymers, your silicones, polyethylene, which is ultra high molecular weight polyethylene, polyurethanes, polymethyl methacrylate, or bone cement. These all are used in this PMMA. It is used in filling space between bone and implant. Other usage can be in orthopedics, artificial tendons, vascular grafts, facial and soft tissue reconstruction, etc. In case of ceramics, alumina, calcium phosphate, which is used for bone grafting, synthetic hydroxyapatite, which used for promoting bone and growth, pyrolytic carbon, which is used in lining of blood contacting prostheses, etc. Some questions are also asked on aerogels. So aerogel is nothing but a material that is around 90 to 98% porous. So these are produced by extracting the liquid component of a gel through a supercritical drying. So your air molecules, they are trapped inside the gel. They would act as insulator and its heat conductivity is close to 0. The applications, it is used in capturing space dust from comets, which was used in NASA Stardust mission 1999, in insulating materials in spacesuits of NASA astronauts since 1960s. Some potential applications in thermal barriers, where extreme cold region clothes such as for Siachen, it requires around 500 grams of gel to coat a jacket. Thermal insulators for cryogenic fuel tanks of rockets, acoustic insulators, building and pipeline insulations. Other category is superconductors. In this case, it can be an element, intermetallic alloy. Yeah. Hello.
Ma'am, aerogels, you told it's a dry part of metal liquids, like you told, right?
Not metal. It can be polymers as well.
It was mentioned as extracting liquid components.
Yeah.
Liquid component means I know mercury is the liquid metal. Other than that, anything is there?
No, like in case of like aerogels can be made of polymers as well. The solid part can be of uh, your your polymer as well.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Is the, yeah, it's visible. Okay, so next is superconductors. These can be elements, intermetallic alloy or compound, which conduct electricity without any resistance and below a characteristic critical temperature. So below certain temperature, it acts as superconductor. These are very costly because to maintain these cryogenic temperatures, it requires a lot of energy. Now some of the examples are mercury, lanthanum, barium, copper oxide, niobium, tin alloy, yttrium, barium, copper oxide. CNT is carbon nanotube, which was discovered in 1991. It is composed of carbon atoms which are linked in hexagonal shapes, with each carbon atom covalently bonded to 3 other carbon atoms. So you must have read it in your 11th 12th class as well. So in this case, your carbon nanotubes, these have diameters in nano range, that's why it's nanotubes. So these have lengths in several centimeters. These nanotubes are the strongest and stiffest material yet discovered in terms of tensile strength and elastic modulus. These are at least 100 times stronger than steel but only 1/6 as heavy. So these are extremely have high thermal conductivity and electrical conductivity. So around 10 times of copper, it has higher thermal conductivity around 10 times of copper and electrical conductivity around 100 times of copper. Combining carbon nanotubes with other materials into composites can be used to reinforce and build lightweight structures. So these are used to reinforce metals as well. Classes are property affecting product design. Now there are various classes of properties. So first we'll be mainly focusing on mechanical properties in few lectures. So but there are other classes as well. First is economic and environmental, in which price and availability, recyclability, sustainability and carbon emission of a material is considered. Second is mechanical, in which modulus, yield and tensile strength, hardness, fracture toughness, fatigue strength, creep strength, damping, these all are considered. In case of thermal conductivity, specific heat, thermal expansion coefficient, these are taken into consideration. Fourth is general physical, which is density of a material. Electrical and magnetic, in this case resistivity, dielectric constant and magnetic permeability is considered. Environmental interaction, so oxidation resistance, corrosion resistance, wear resistance, these all depend on environment of the material. Production, so ease of manufacturing, how easily you can manufacture some product, how easy it is to join it, how easy it is to give a good finishing. Aesthetic will be based on color, texture and feel of materials. Now moving on to mechanical properties. So these are some mechanical properties. So these depend on how your material behave against some stress that you apply on a material. This is your stress strain graph. So this is obtained by tensile testing a material, that you will be studying in next few chapters as well. So why we need to determine mechanical properties? So if you determine a mechanical property of a material, you can list various properties and based on that you can determine how much material you need to use in a particular product, what should be the particular dimensions, so you can make an economical design, so that can lead to some profit as well. Now basic terms that are used are stress and strain. So first is stress. So it is the internal resistance force per unit area acting on a material. So it uses the original cross section area of the specimen and is also known as engineering stress or conventional stress. And this is given as force upon original area A naught. Unit can be Pascal or Newton per meter square. So this is your cylindrical specimen. So here in first case you are applying a tensile type of, you're pulling your sample, so this is a tensile type of loading. And if you are trying to squeeze your material, then it is a compressive type of loading. Second is strain. So it is defined as the change in length per original length. So here you have to divide it with L naught, which is original length. It is unitless, so you are dividing length by length, so it is unitless, and also known as engineering strain or conventional strain. Sometimes strain is also expressed in microstrain. So 1 microstrain will be equals to 10 to the power minus 6. So this is your change in length. So delta L divided by initial length will be your strain. Now Hooke's law is in this linear part of stress strain curve. So up to this part your stress is proportional to your strain. So how much stress you apply, you will be getting strain. In this constant, there is a proportional constant that will be your elastic modulus. So within the elastic limit up to low strength values, the stress is directly proportional to the strain, and the behavior of solid is linear elastic. The constant of proportion is called elastic modulus, capital E. It also holds good for stresses and strain in simple compression. So when you apply compression test as well, then also you will be getting linear part. In same way, shear stress tau is proportional to shear strain gamma. So here tau will be equals to G times gamma, where G is your shear modulus. And the pressure is proportional to the negative of the dilation, volumetric strain, because positive pressure causes a shrinkage of volume, hence P will be equals to minus K delta V upon V. K will be your bulk modulus. Now other property is elastic limit. So the greatest stress that a material can withstand without any measurable permanent strain are unloading. After unloading, so initially when you are applying stress, so your material will deform in this area as recovery. It can recover after you remove this stress. So up to this your yield strength, before yield strength you will be finding your elastic limit, and yield strength will be stress at which a material begins to deform plastically. It is determined by the stress corresponding to the intersection of stress strain curve and a line parallel to elastic line offset by a strain of 0.2% or strain 0.002. So in some materials, here you can easily see that it is yield strength, but in some cases it won't be showing any deviation. So in that case you will be having to use an parallel line to this line, and by taking some offset of 0.002. Now when this will be intersecting, that will be your yield strength. Tensile strength or ultimate tensile strength it is maximum load divided by the original cross-sectional area A0 of a specimen. This will be corresponding to this point, which is highest here. Percent elongation, it is final length minus initial length divided by initial length times 100. Percent reduction in area, it will be initial area minus final area divided by initial area times 100. Other properties are true stress and true strain. Now previously we divided your load and change in length by original length. So in this case you divide it with instantaneous length and instantaneous area. So true stress strain curve gives a true indication of deformation characteristics because it is based on the instantaneous dimension of the specimen. In engineering stress strain curve, stress drops down after necking since it is based on the original area. And the true stress strain curve, the stress however increases after necking. So in case of your engineering curve, it keeps falling after necking, while in this case it keeps on going upwards because strain hardening keeps happening. The flow curve of many metals in the region of uniform plastic deformation can be expressed by the simple power law. So sigma T equals to K times Et times N. So sigma T is your true stress, Et is your true strain, K is your strength coefficient, N is strain hardening exponent. Now this value of your strain hardening exponent, it will be 0 for perfectly plastic solids, it will be 1 for elastic solids, and for most metals it will be between 0.1 to 0.5. Other properties are ductility and brittleness. So first is ductility. In this case you measure the degree of plastic deformation that has been sustained at fracture. So if your material at failure shows an strain greater than 0.05 or percent elongation is greater than 5%, then your material will be ductile material, and it will be having well defined yield point. If your material is brittle, it will be having this blue type of stress strain curve. So it will be showing very low this fracture strain. So AC is your for brittle material, while AC dash the type of strain will be in case of ductile material. So a material that experiences very little or no plastic deformation upon fracture, it will be brittle material. In this case strain will be lesser than 0.05 or percent elongation is less than 5%. It does not exhibit an identifiable yield point. So this is your brittle type of behavior that is shown here, and these are various stages that are seen in case of ductile failure. Next property is resilience. Resilience is the area under this elastic part of the stress strain curve. So this will be a triangular type of area. So this will be half times sigma y and Ey. So resilience is the capacity of a material to absorb energy when it is deformed elastically and then recover same upon unloading. Modulus of resilience, which is the strain energy per unit volume required to stress a material from an unloaded state up to the point of yielding. This is in terms of energy, so its unit will be joule per meter cube. So your modulus of resilience is equals to 1/2 times sigma y Ey. Now Ey can also be written in terms of elastic modulus, so it will be sigma y upon E from Hooke's law. Now you can get sigma y square upon 2E. Now in case of resilient materials, these have high yield strength and low modulus of elasticity. For example, beryllium copper, and this is used in spring applications, the materials with resilient properties. Next is toughness. In case of toughness, it will be your entire area under the curve, not up to only elastic part. It is the measure of ability of the material to absorb energy up to fracture. It is represented by total area under the stress strain curve up to the fracture point. And brittle material has comparatively high yield and tensile strength but low toughness due to lack of ductility. So you can see in case of blue region, it has very low area under the curve. So brittle materials have less toughness, and ductile materials are tougher than the brittle ones. So you can see the area under the curve is higher in ductile materials. Next is impact testing. So in these tests, load swings from a given height to strike the specimen and the energy dissipated in the fracture is measured. So in case of metallic samples, they tend to be square in cross section, while polymeric samples, they are taken rectangular. And the factors that affect impact energy, so your yield strength, temperature and presence of notch, these are some factors that affect your impact strength. For a given material, impact energy will be seen to decrease if the yield strength is increased. So if a material has higher yield strength, it will show lower impact strength. The notch serves as stress concentration zone, and some materials are more sensitive towards notch than others. And most of the impact energy is absorbed by means of plastic deformation during the yielding. Therefore, factors that affect the yield behavior of the material, such as temperature and strain rate, they affect impact energy. Now, typical ceramics, they show low impact strength because they are very notch sensitive. Metals, on the other hand, they have very high impact strength, and polymers and composites, they show moderate impact strength. Next property is hardness. It is measure of material's resistance to localized plastic deformation. This deformation can be in form of small indentation or a scratch. The advantage of hardness testing, so this is simple and inexpensive test. So no special specimen preparation is needed, and apparatus is relatively cheaper. Non-destructive method, and a small indentation is the only deformation, and other mechanical properties like tensile strength and fatigue strength can be obtained from the hardness data. So first is Mohs scale. This is based on the ability of a material to scratch another. So hardness is measured on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being softest, which is torque, 10 is diamond. So diamond is taken as 10 Mohs hardness, and in between your quartz, fluorite, all these have different scales. Other macro hardness tests consist of Rockwell hardness testing, Brinell hardness testing, and Vickers hardness testing. And micro hardness test consists of Knoop micro hardness test, Vickers micro hardness test. In micro hardness test, your load that you will be applying, that will be lower in size. Now these are various states. In case of first is Brinell test. In this case, your indenter that is used is 10 mm steel or tungsten carbide ball, and it has loads that I used are 500 kg, 1500 kg and 3000 kg depending on material that you are testing. And hardness number is defined by this formula, where capital D is diameter of the indenter wall, small d is your diameter of your indentation. Second is Vickers hardness test. In this case you use diamond pyramid and your indentation will look like this one. So you measure diagonals in this case, and based on these diagonals you use this formula 1.8 times load divided by L square. L is your diagonal. Based on this you find Vickers hardness. Third is Knoop hardness. In this case you use pyramid of diamond. It is not as symmetric in this case. So in this case you apply 25 gram to 5 kilogram of the force. And fourth is your Rockwell hardness. So in this case you measure depth of indentation, and the formulas are 100 minus 500 T for A, C, D type of scales, and 130 minus 500 T. T is your depth of penetration. In B, F, G, E, these scales of hardness, and based on these scales you have different type of loads as well. So for example, if you want to measure hardness of a steel, then you use HRC scale. So this based on various materials that you test, so based on that you used either diamond cone indenter or you either use steel ball indenter. Next property is creep. In this case it is permanent deformation under constant load, so over a period of time. So it is dependent on temperature. In this case a creep test involves a tensile specimen under a constant load maintained at a constant temperature. So you keep on increasing the time and you see how much deformation is there. At relatively high temperatures, creep appears to occur at all stress levels, but the creep rate increases with increasing stress at a given temperature. So if you increase say temperature or stress, in both cases you will be increasing the rate of creep. Applications. So for studying the material behavior at elevated temperatures such as turbine blades, nuclear reactor components, jet engines, heat exchangers, etc. Now creep, as you can see in this graph, creep occurs in three stages: primary stage, secondary stage and tertiary stage. In first stage it occurs at beginning of the test and creep is mostly transient. Second stage creep rate is roughly steady, and in third stage creep rate begins to accelerate as the cross sectional area decreases due to necking followed by failure, and failure in this case is known as rupture. Final mechanical properties is damping property. So methods of vibration reduction in case of materials, there are two methods. You can either increase damping capacity of material, so you can select a material which has higher damping capacity. For example, cast iron beds are used in case of lathe machine because of higher damping capacity. You can increase stiffness of a material. So damping refers to the dissipation of energy from a vibrating system. So damping force magnitude is generally smaller than elastic and inertia forces. So even if damping force is smaller, it is important for controlling vibration, particularly near resonance. Advantage of using a material with high damping capacity is that it will be absorbing shocks, it will prevent any fatigue failure, and it will also reduce noise. So that's it from my side. If you have any query you can ask. So I'll show you the questions that I showed initially so that you know how to solve these questions. So this was the first question: In this case, you have to tell near elastic limit zone tensile stress decreases at a faster rate, because due to strain hardening, your tensile strain increases at faster rate compared to stress. In second question, you have to tell what the subscript I and J in case of stress tensor represent. So first I represents direction of stress, and second subscript tells normal to the surface of which they are acting. Third question, you have to tell which statement is correct. So these are various statements. In this case, necking starts at UTS point. Yield point phenomena are seen in mild steel type of materials where you have interstitial type of atoms. Endurance limit can be determined by tensile testing. No, it can't be determined using this. It is determined using fatigue test. And yield strength is structure sensitive property. Yes, it is structure sensitive, because if your microstructure changes, then your yield strength will be different as well. In fourth question, you have to remember this formula. It will be helpful. So in this case, you have to tell what will be the ratio of E upon G, your Young's modulus and modulus of rigidity. It will be 2 times 1 plus nu. Fifth question is, Rockwell test utilizes blank as a measure of hardness. So your options are load, depth of indentation, diameter of indentation, and time of loading. So in case of Rockwell test, you use depth of indentation. In sixth case, which materials are 95% porous? So your aerogels are 95% porous and very light materials. Seventh question is, which of the following is not a biomaterial? So your lead is a toxic metal, so it is not used as biomaterial. The hardness of a material is resistance of a material against indentation, permanent deformation. So this will be your answer. In case of ninth question, you again have to use the same formula. So in this case, you are given the ratio of E upon G, which is 3. You just have to put in this formula and you will be getting value of Poisson's ratio as 0.5. 10th question is, what is the advantage of using honeycomb type of structure in engineering applications? So these are very light type of materials, so these have high strain to weight ratio. So if you have any query, you can ask.
Is there any way? Is there any way to get this presentation?
This
Will you upload
presentation,
this in?
can you repeat?
Is there any way? What you showed, is there any PDF? Is there?
Yeah, this PDF will be shared by NPTEL. Like they'll be sharing a public sheet, and that you'll be having link of the entire video and this presentation. I think they'll be sharing a sheet with you.
Okay.
Okay. If you don't have any queries, you can leave the meeting, and I'll be taking next meeting next week, and yeah, I'll be present here till 5 o'clock if you have any query. Otherwise, you can leave.